gonna fall asleep.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I need to read this off first as we start and before we get into introductions. This is to formally advise that as required by MGL Chapter 30A, Sections 1825, and pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 21, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures signed into law on January 16, 2020, as extended by Chapter 2 of the Acts of 23, the Yarmouth Community and Economic Development Committee will hold a public meeting on Tuesday, June 13th at 4 o'clock in the hearing room at Town Hall, 1146 Route 28, South Yarmouth, 02664. The public is welcome to attend either in person or via the alternative public access provided on the notice of the meeting available on the Town of Yarmouth website. With that said, I will ask for introductions. We'll start off to my left.
Danielle Newcomb?
Danielle, welcome.
Thank you.
Peter Slovak.
Peter. Steve O'Neill.
Maria Marasco?
Joe Gibbs.
All right, we have Karen from the staff, Karen Green from the staff. We also have a full complement of people from the town here today. They can't wait to talk with us,
We
so.
should note who's absent from our committee.
Joe Manning is not present today. Joe is attending another function, could not make it today. With that said, do we want to jump to item number 6 first? Is that-
I actually will do that when the full complement of the group is present, and I'll let you know, Mr. Chairman.
Well,
So-
Joe will not be here, so I think here is what we have.
No,
Oh,
of the,
got it. Okay, okay.
the
Very good. We'll hold off.
presenters.
All right, so let's start off with item number 2 then, Riverwalk Park Board Loop and Event Space Letter of Support for DRI Exemption Request.
Danielle, it's largely for you. There's some extra information in the packet, and it's there for Courtney as well. Just some background on the committee, and happy to run through it with you outside of the meeting sometime.
Thank you.
So in the packet, after all that committee background stuff, is a draft letter for your consideration that's been submitted by Kathy Williams. Kathy couldn't be here today. She's at a different meeting. She's requesting that the CEDC sign a letter supporting the town's request for a DRI, that's Development of Regional Impact, exemption from the Cape Cod Commission. The Riverwalk Park Boardwalk and Event Space project for a few reasons. One, because of its size, the area that's in the floodplain, and also because it is required to have an environmental impact report because it's in an environmental justice area. It's required to go through the Cape Cod Commission Development of Regional Impact process because of the public benefits that are kind of very noticeable for this project. We thought it was best to seek an exemption from the Cape Cod Commission process, and to that end, Kathy's drafted a letter for your consideration. It really highlights the benefits to the town. It gives background about the drive-in site. It talks about the recent work over the last 8 years, working on the project, the funding that's been received, and it notes, last paragraph, it's clear this project will have significant benefits to the town of Yarmouth and our businesses, but that it won't have significant impacts, negative impacts, outside of Yarmouth for sure. Usually a development of regional impact is looking at things like traffic and other kind of bad impacts. So if you'd like to take a vote, we can
Sure, if any
discuss. Any questions, I'm
questions
happy
from,
to.
I've had some effort and input on this project, and I know it's been studied to death, as well as it's had a lot of environmental impact reports and reviews already done by the consultant, Beta, I believe, and it's been studied to death, so I think this would just be another layer that is unnecessary, especially what Karen just said relative to it not having, the project itself not having an impact on the region, definitely on the town, but not the region, so. I take a motion if, go ahead.
I have a question. So is Kathy going to present this to the commission? Is there going to be a live hearing on this?
It will go to the commission. It'll be Kathy, tag team with Beta. We've been working with Eric Galley at Beta, and they will go and present this. And
Okay. And she's satisfied that it meets all the criteria for previous
Yes.
exemptions?
yes,
Okay.
happy to keep the board informed. If anybody would like to attend the Cape Cod Commission hearing, speak in favor.
I just
We'll
would
let
en-
you know when.
I just would encourage her and sort of offer it if we, there's a consensus and we can make a motion, that if for any reason the commission hesitates or wants additional information, I would make a motion that this committee endorse the letter that Kathy Williams has crafted in support of the exemption, and in addition, just offer, the committee would be available for any additional questions or level of support that she might need to support this with the commission. So that's my motion.
There's a motion. We have a second?
Second.
We have a second. We have any further discussion on it? If not, then we need a roll call. We'll start off with Danielle. Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Steve O'Neill?
We
just say
actually
it-
need to say your name and
Yeah.
how
It's
you vote.
It's because, excuse me, it's because it's a Zoom meeting, and it's open to the public, and I'm not sure whether or not Courtney's on. I can't see that far.
Yep.
I see her name up there. And you've been sworn in, just so everybody knows, Danielle just got sworn in today.
All right.
And so usually votes can be done just by, a voice aye or a nay. But because of the nature of the remote setting, you have to say, Danielle Newcomb, aye. Assuming that's how you'd like to say it.
Thank you.
Danielle Newcomb, aye.
Peter Slovak, aye.
Steve O'Neill, aye.
Maria Marasco, aye.
Joe Gibbs, aye.
And now is Courtney sworn in?
I don't believe Courtney has been sworn in.
Courtney, you there?
You're on mute, Courtney.
You're mute. She's there, but she's mute. Okay, no problem. All right. Thank you very much for that. Item number 3, we have the public improvement applications, the initial review. Karen, do you want to?
Sure, I'll do my best. I haven't had too much time to go through them all. Just wanted to remind you all that back in May, we issued a request to department and division heads for their desired, for funding requests, similar to what you've done in the past for special events.
Right.
Just saying we have a budget for public improvements, and what projects do you have that we might be able to fund? So that went out in May. We got a number of projects. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 projects. A few from DPW. DPW, partnering with other agents as needed. A couple from Conservation, and one from the Historical Commission. So you should have in your packet copies of each of those. And I'm not sure, Mr. Chairman, how you'd like to handle it. If you'd like to review them, just flip through them. What I would imagine is what we've discussed before, having folks in, we do have one department head here. Amanda Lima from engineering is in the back of the room. I don't know if you want to invite Amanda to talk about her project. I
Yeah.
don't think Amanda can make it on the 27th.
Okay.
But what we had discussed previously was kind of the committee taking your initial review.
Right.
If you have some questions that you want us to forward out to, each of the applicants, we're happy to do that, help them prepare for the next meeting
Right.
on the 27th, and then you can really dive into
Right.
your
That's good.
questions.
That was going to be my initial thought was, let me just say this. Why don't we just go through these quickly, if we could, just to get a brief sketch of what they're all about? And let me suggest to the committee, too, that we not take any votes this evening. I want all of us to really dive into these as much as we can with the idea or notion that if there's something else that we could tie into, if we can leverage some other money, or that these projects tie into a community development and/or economic development thrust, and they tie back to some type of plan. For example, if there's work to be done at a bathhouse improvement at Sandy Pond, does that tie to a master plan, the parks and recreation? Any work that the Concom wants to do on some of these signs or invasive management, does that tie in back to a open space plan? Those type of things. So, having said that,
I would just suggest that since we have Amanda here, and I know how busy she is, because she's working on 3 projects with the Cape and Vineyard Electric Cooperative. I would like to just, if you want to come up, Amanda, and when we hit the projects that are pertinent to you, maybe if you want to add anything, that would be super, all right?
yeah, come on up now. Sure, we might as well take you.
Do you want me to pull each of the projects up on the screen for you?
Yeah.
Okay, so
So, sure. Amanda, before you start, my compliments to you for the work that you did with, on the Common, on the 6H project. Remember, we had some issues with water runoff coming onto the Common, and that seems to be rectified with the addition of another catch basin put up to the northeast side, I think it is.
That's
So
great.
thank you for that work. Nice
Yeah.
work.
Does this mic work? Everyone
Is that
hear
mic
me?
on?
Okay, all right. Amanda Lima, I'm the town engineer. I'm here tonight following up from a letter that I've written to your committee a few months ago in regards to the time schedule for the Sandy Pond playground and splash deck improvements. That project was funded by community preservation funds for $1.7 million. We're going through inflation just like everybody else. The project was for the playground and the splash deck, but the bathhouse itself is right in the middle of it. As you had mentioned, the bathhouse is, as part of the master plan, is to be replaced, but timing-wise, it won't be immediate. And it's really unfortunate to be putting together an inclusive playground that allows all abilities and disabilities and not doing a little bit to the bathhouse to kind of make it a little bit more user-friendly. I had great hopes and dreams that I would be coming forward with a lot more improvements just to get us.
Is this it, Amanda?
It is, yep.
Okay. Everybody, I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
just to see what
And,
page we're on.
But unfortunately, it is difficult to, once you start touching things and making things, fully accessible, it is difficult. So I had written a letter to you guys a few months ago to kind of what my hopes and dreams were at the time. We have a contractor on site. They mobilized last fall. They are wrapping up, which is why I really wanted to come tonight. As you know, when you have a contractor, you want to hold on to them because the hardest part is getting somebody out on the ground and actually working, whether you have an electrician. Same thing goes for municipal projects. So we have everybody. They have their subs for their electricians. They're wrapping up. We have a grand opening proposed for June 24th at 9 a.m. for the playground and splash deck. This work I'm really pushing to be done as soon, to begin as soon as you guys do approve it. I wasn't sure exactly what was happening this meeting and the next meeting. That's why I had asked Karen to come before you tonight. So just to kind of go over, the application I put together aren't estimates. These are actual quotes, and the contractor, like I mentioned, is ready to go. We have 3 different entities as part of the submission here. The first one is Green Acres Landscaping, who is out there right now as the general contractor. Their scope of work includes, right now, there was no electricity at the site, so there's no window. The window's providing the natural lighting within the bathhouse, which, when you're in a bathroom stall, it's still dark. So these improvements would provide lighting. It also provides a GFI outlet, so if Parks wants to maintain the bathhouse on the off season to do, like, for example, there's no heat, so they can't paint in the off season. But if they have a GFI, they can bring a blower or a heater in. So it helps the longevity of the maintenance for this facility. We did do a change order to bring power over because we were going to do solar initially and put it on the bathhouse to provide electricity for the actuator for the splash deck. But we did decide, just for reliability, we changed over from solar to and be able to have the flexibility to do something to the bathhouse for that. The other part of it is that the project was scoped to have 2 porta potties, and as a mom, bringing your kid in a porta potty is never fun. So, so now we're trying to, invest a little bit more into the bathhouse versus, making our visitors and everybody be using porta potties, as limited as much as we can. So that was also included as part of the project, and the reason why was because if the current building is manned for being unlocked and locked on a daily basis, so the playground and splash decks bathroom that's right next to it would be locked at 3 o'clock. So you'd have, users from 3 to 7 not having any restrooms. So as part of this project, it's also included to replace the doors that have failed, to provide locks, timers, and motion detection within, just similar to our other bathhouses, that would allow us to have more control over the hours of operation for the bathhouse. Another, just, you can see the aesthetics of the building that I had submitted. A fresh coat of paint goes a long way. So proposing exterior paint, trim, interior paint, walls, ceilings, floors. Again, that is truly just to make it a little bit more welcoming of an experience using the restroom. Another small thing is that there's no baby changing tables in there, so at least providing that. Long-term, when we do the master plan and replace it, you'd want changing facilities for an infant or a child, but also an adult if they're using this, inclusive playground. But that won't be now. So now it's kind of like an interim step to try to get us, because as you're familiar with other projects, the bathhouses are very expensive to replace and make them fully accessible. I mentioned the doors, and then for one of them, the remaining item was to have town staff be able to install the doors.
So,
Go ahead.
so Amanda, so are you suggesting that this, of all the projects that you have, that this has some time is of the essence because you actually have the contractors on site?
Yes.
And if we waited, you might lose them or
Right.
lose the
Yes.
opportunity to have that?
Right.
So I understand, Mr. Chairman, that, you'd like
I
to
know.
review
We're
this,
on the same
but,
page. We're on the same page.
so, in that context, though, Amanda, of all the other projects, are they time sensitive?
The other ones that DBW
Yeah,
has
that
submitted?
you've asked money for?
I know,
You have
I
to
was
contact.
familiar with the Parkers River. That one wasn't as time sensitive. I'm not familiar with the DNR
Okay.
kiosk.
So I might
Go ahead.
suggest that we make an exception to your original, no, I mean, I understand. I mean, it would be nice to take this as a group, but I'm hearing from Amanda that the sooner that she knows that she has funds in hand, the sooner that this project would be done. And would it be done by the grand opening on?
No.
I would be very, yes,
24?
optimistic. The only one that can't commit to that as of right now is the painter. So that one, we're gonna keep the porta potty that's on site now for the couple days that, they need to complete their work. But we had a meeting on site today that said that they could pencil us in towards the end of June. So, and getting, getting those securements is
I'll leave
very
it to you
important.
how do you want to handle it?
Just a couple other questions. When this project was put out for bid, was there a deadline on it, and did you have all the resources to do this, or not?
So there was no real schedule, just the schedule that we committed to.
Okay.
So we've been able to keep on schedule and on budget, as, whether it be pre-purchasing the equipment, because as, you're familiar with the, inflation, but along lead times is a big thing. Like the compan equipment originally had like a 5 to 6 month window, so we procured that ahead of time so that we could get it. So I think it's been more or less our own schedule in regards to that. And the goal has always, been to try to get it for the opening of the beaches full-time.
So I'm going someplace with this, so just bear with me a minute. So you put the project out, and as you had the money, you pick off things that need to be done per that bid, right? Is that how you did it?
Right, well, yeah, we had an engineer's estimate that was as close as we could get, minusing their fee, and yeah, we put out a bid with that in mind.
I just don't want to run afoul of any of the regs that we need to comply with for our dollars relative to bidding, that's all. So it sounds like we're all set.
I think that the amount of
Is-
$41,720 over the $1.7 million
Yeah.
total budget
Gotcha,
won't be an issue.
gotcha.
We're able to provide, a change order.
Good,
Right.
good. And then the contractors to finish up by the end of June. Is that what you were saying before?
Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, in the spirit of what Maria was saying, I contradict myself that I don't want to wait necessarily. Yeah, this is summer season right now. We want to get this done as quickly as we can. My only other question is, this was part of a sometimes ago done master plan for that upgrade of the park? So
Correct,
it's
yeah, done a little
consistent.
bit out of order,
Yep.
based on different interests, but yeah.
And the money that you are doing the work with right now is from what source or sources?
Community preservation funds.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
that's good. That's what we're all about, to see how we can lever these dollars with something else, so that's good. All right.
So may I ask, the 41,720 is no longer part of the 1.7? It's,
In addition
It's in
to-
addition to.
Yes, the 1.7 included just the playground and the splash deck.
is the 1.7, are they coming in over or under that budget amount?
As of right now, I'm on budget.
Okay. What if they came in under, by 41,720? Would we,
I think how, as of right now, looking in my crystal ball, is that the intent would be to be able to utilize buying additional chains and swings and different things that, we know are gonna break or potentially get vandalized. So it really becomes, if you purchase it now, you're getting it at today's dollars, you're able to have it right on hand and not have to wait because those are tend to be items that break pretty commonly on. So, but there, as of right now, there is a contingency, but this would allow the flexibility to be able to keep them both on budget.
okay. So this wasn't part of the 1.7 initially? Okay.
Any other questions? Joe? Good? Do we need a motion then, or,
I would make a motion and a second and a vote.
all right,
I'd like to make a motion that we act upon this particular application because we have heard information sufficient that time is of the essence in order to get these improvements done by, as we say, the summer season. So I make a motion that we allocate $41,720, do you want it to the penny, or you?
720.
Yes, very good. $41,720 for the items listed on the scope of work. And I think I might say in regard to Mr. Slovak's comment, that any excess of, more than 10% you should notify this committee and give us the opportunity to either, leave it with you or transfer it to another project within the DPW. So my motion is to
Fund up to.
fund up to, very good, like up to $41,720,000 for the scope of work articulated under the DPW's application dated June 7th, 2023, for the Sandy Pond Bathhouse, 42 Buck Island Road in West Yarmouth,
From our public improvement.
from our public improvement funds, yes,
can I have a second on that?
the teamwork.
Second.
Second, Joe Gibbs. All right, we need to vote.
Danielle Newcomb, aye.
Peter Slovak, aye.
Steve O'Neill, aye.
Maria Marasco, aye.
Joe Gibbs, aye.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys taking.
No,
the time.
thank you. That was a great application. That's exactly what we're looking for. This is a good community development project, and, you demonstrated that you're leveraging some other dollars here, and you tied it back to a plan that was done some time ago, so it's consistent with that plan. So, good work. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
So, Amanda, while you're here, are there any other projects that you feel like you want to comment on while we have you? And if not, that's okay. Don't worry, no worries.
No, I do
No,
not.
she's not.
Okay.
But thank you.
That's okay.
Thank
All right, so, that's it, thank you. We'll go back to the top, then we'll start off with DPW, DNR kiosks, Department of Natural Resources. So we got Colonial Acres and Bass Hole.
So this was a request, so as you know, or may not know, DPW has a number of divisions.
Right.
So Amanda really has been lead on the Sandy Pond through the engineering division.
Yep.
This application was submitted kind of in a partnership between Division of Natural Resources, a separate department, together with the Assistant Director of DPW, Roby Whitehouse, worked on this one. And this is an application to, I've got the application on the screen. Reduce visual pollution associated with excess signage at the beaches, the beach entrance, and this is for Colonial Beach and Bass Hole. And this would be overseen by Roby together with Bill Benetti, Natural Resource Director. And what it would do is, I think it's easiest to start with the picture. You can see kind of some of the sign clutter, I'll call it.
Yep.
And the idea is really to consolidate signage into one place that would be a kiosk. And I don't know that
Yeah, I
they,
don't see a picture, so.
I don't see that they
I
put a
don't know
picture.
what that is exactly.
That's a good question, Maria, and we can,
That's
I
sort of-
think that's one for
Right.
Roby and Bill.
Right.
What are you imagining? There are kiosks,
This-
I know.
There's some ideas of some sketches in the back, of what the handout that, some of the hardware that's included with the, what
There is
could
a
be.
there is a really nice kiosk. It's just outside the chamber office at
Right.
424, right? So that's one example, but I'll get pictures from Roby of what they're
The one at-
imagining.
That's at Packet? You put the
There is one
glass
at
and you?
Packet.
put
There
the-
is one at Packet at Well.
The,
Okay, that gets kind of cluttered too, so it'd be interesting to
Right.
see what they envision.
and the other one on that is, is there power to the location where they want to put these? So,
I don't believe so, but we can ask.
But typically you don't light them.
Right.
Well, a solar light might not be such a bad idea,
Depends if you
You know.
encourage people to go there.
Exactly.
all right,
Exactly.
good.
so
So,
that, more information would be,
yep, we got to dive into that.
Any other questions on that one?
So it's pretty much the power and location and,
I would just ask too, are they moving all these individual signs onto these sign boards? Or is it gonna be cleaned up to make it look nicer? Because I mean, I think just moving these all to one big board is an improvement, but not
no.
necessarily the greatest improvement.
So you're maybe asking, will the signage be redesigned to fit the space?
Right. Or all they're doing is just taking off individual posts and putting them on this board.
I think one other question that I'd ask is, I don't see the dimensions, which might be helpful.
Yeah, this,
Yes.
a lot more details required, I think.
and yeah, and something, if we're gonna, my comment is that if we're gonna approve this concept of a kiosk at various locations, we might want something that says, welcome, Town of Yarmouth, or enjoy, or something that says, I'm here,
Yep. I think
and
it's a
where
nice
you
idea.
are.
There are renderings at the end,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
altogether clear.
No, it's not.
I think those are the assembling instructions. So,
There's a page that says quote, that's saying that each kiosk is $3,000.
And it's,
And then at the back of the first page, there's one that says cost $305 per kiosk.
Right.
Equaling $610,
right.
which are two very different numbers.
Says the math major.
the math.
Good point, very good
I
point.
just,
Yeah.
because on the back of the first page, if the total's actually 7,500, I had done the math earlier when I had looked at this, and it works out to like $430 per hour that we're paying someone to put it together.
Right, right.
And we may be assembling them. I don't know if who's assembling them. Danielle, so I see the 7507.
So on that page, see how it says cost 305 per kiosk times 2
Yeah.
equals 610? But then the total request is 7507.
Yeah,
If the kiosks only cost 610 and the only other thing listed there is labor, which is 8 hours, that's $431 per hour of labor.
clarify page 2 quote.
Can I ask just a general
Sure
question?
can, fire away, yes.
On something, there was the overall budget page.
Didn't have
It should be a big,
Yeah, this
page, an
thing.
11 by 17 page too. Oh, their budget or our budget?
It's the fiscal year '24 Tourism Revenue Preservation Fund allocation.
That's the budget
Right.
page you're looking at?
I was just trying to understand, does that mean that what we're paying from is the 175,000 for public improvements?
I think, yeah.
I'm just trying
So,
to get an idea
yeah,
of what the
and-
total is that we're working from.
You're right, yep.
Yep. So there's a balance on hand.
Okay.
I'm just trying to get to the right page.
It's actually about $430,000 if you look total, because it's carry forward. It's $175,000, I think, is this year's allocation.
Okay.
But then if you look, there's like 257 left over from last year, I think is how it goes.
Yeah, so like in available immediately right now is $257,000. On July 1,
We're gonna have
we
a
get
lot
the
more.
new money that's been appropriated for FY '24, and that's an additional 175.
Perfect, thank you so much.
Got it, good questions. All right, so any more questions on the kiosk? If not,
Okay, so
then we'll go to
What was-
DPW,
what's the next one?
Yarmouth Chamber of Commerce Restoration Plan at Parkers River Beach.
Parker's River?
I got to triple click to get it to launch. So this is an application submitted by DPW, and I know they've been working closely with Mary at the Chamber of Commerce. Mary's here if you'd like her to speak to this, but these are to kind of look into the design for improvements at the Parkers River Beach. It's a very popular beach. It's where the summer concerts are held. It is an environmentally sensitive area, and kind of improvements need to take all of that into consideration. So Jeff put this application in. It's to provide a survey, plan development, and landscape architecture services for the Parkers River Beach, most proximate to the concession restroom building, the dunes, and the area near the park. And this would start in fall of '23 and be overseen by Jeff in coordination with Parks, another division of DPW. The budget here is a total of $25,000, with $10,000 for the survey and base plan, $7,500 for landscape architect, and then permitting at $7,500.
All right, I have two questions.
Go ahead.
What does landscape architect services mean? To pay for the survey? So I don't know. So it's just more information about landscape architect services. And why would the town pay $7,500 for permitting? And kind of in advance of knowing exactly what we would be doing.
I think, well,
Barry, do you have any, no? So it just, a little bit more information would be helpful for me. Because, is there an additional amount of funds that is likely to be requested to implement this? And you did say, like, submit a, if you had drawings or something like that, but there's nothing, that's,
that's the application
That's it.
that's been received.
okay, thank you.
Just, any questions? Anyone else before
I just have one thing on this, and I went back to reread this as we go through these projects, so our enabling, legislation for this that dedicates a 20% minimum to this is public improvements, including beautification, recreational resources, public improvements related to the mutual needs of visitors and residents, is what this is. Now, we've funded studies before, but not necessarily out of public improvements. To this, where this is mostly study, is it appropriate necessarily for this?
my answer would be yes, it is. And we go to the end use of it, and it's going, who's the beneficiary of it? And I would say the general public is the beneficiary, so I think it's an allowed use of these funds for that purpose.
And I have another comment, too. This town, among a lot of other towns, is notorious for pay for studies and they go on a shelf. So And it would be nice to know what the end game is for this.
I think,
here.
so I think that, you know, I can't speak for Jeff, but I could guess that part of this too would be you'd want a cost estimate for what's been proposed, because in general, the site, any survey work that's going to be done would be covered under the first item. The landscape architect is going to say,
I'd like to hear, yeah, I'd like
these
more
are the
information
plants
from
you can
Jeff.
do,
That would be
and then you
helpful.
need the cost.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I just think we need a little more information relative to, I got an idea what they want. I'm a little concerned about the landscape architect services, what it is they're gonna do, and then the survey and base plan development. I'm unclear what those two things mean. All right, it's not clear to me. I understand what landscape architect services, what they can do, what they would do. What I'm concerned is, what is the need for a survey and a base plan? That suggests to me, if you, elsewhere on the agenda, we got the former drive-in site. There's a real clear distinction between the base plan and what it does and what is followed after that. So I guess what I'm saying is, I'm unclear what we need the base plan for. The base plan really lays out the area that's going to be redeveloped based upon what the architectural services come up with. That's all done. So I guess, I'd just like a little more information from Jeff
Okay.
on that. But Mary, did you want to say something? Ask us something?
Good afternoon. Mary Vilbon with the Yarmouth Chamber of Commerce. So partly why the Chamber was working with DPW on this project, so over the last 8 years that I've organized the summer concert series there, hundreds of people attend every single Monday night for 8 to 9 weeks, every Monday evening, residents as well as guests to our town. And over the 8 years, we've seen the dunes start to come over on the beach side in front of the stage area where the concerts are performed and in front of the concession area. Then as well, the plants had started to overgrow as you're walking up the path to the concessions as well as to the restrooms. So we like to always think about maintaining and making our sites aesthetically appealing to our residents and our guests. And over the past several years, Parker's River Beach has not been very well maintained. And so we've come to the point where we needed to engage with conservation as well as DPW about how do we look at this site moving forward to maintain it and get it to a place where it is much more appealing to the public. Right now, if you haven't been there, please take the time to walk over there. Come to the concerts that start on July 3rd and see exactly what we're talking about. And conservation and DPW, you know, while I don't understand the studies that they need to, you know, are required to do so that we can address some of these issues, they're willing to work with us. They said there are things that we could do for this particular site. So I appreciate you even moving forward and asking those questions. But that's why the chamber came forward with that.
Okay, thank you, Mary.
Yep.
That's helpful. But just more information, I think. How about, I've been there, I've walked around a little bit, so I do know what you're talking about. I just don't know the condition of the restrooms and whether they need to be brought up to speed, like something we're doing with Sandy Pond, but that's something maybe we can ask.
It also raises a very interesting point. I mean, since we have so many beaches and beach areas,
Yes.
it would be very interesting to know from the town, what is their maintenance plan? Because I'd hate to see us doing one-offs, you know, playing catch-up with what should have been done over a period of time. And I would also like to know whether or not, given the nature, are these always going to be site-specific? Again, or should we look at an overall beach improvement, public improvement program? So so nothing gets out of hand, as Mary points out, because she said over 8 years. It's a little odd to me that at least we're hearing about it now, so.
So if that's something Jeff could get us as well.
Yeah, and the sooner the better, so we
And
can,
Karen, are you clear what we're asking for there? Good. Just why does this pop up?
So we can get
versus
this
other-
going before your
some other
concert
park in
series
town.
starts.
You know, so,
And I think this one popped up because it's so well-used and the chamber kind of
right,
elevated attention to it.
yep.
But I think your question about, you know, the maintenance plan for the beaches, we can ask Jeff. I know there's an agreement about raking at the beaches, but that's something too that will involve the Conservation Commission.
Yep. Again, if there's any plan that Parks and Recs has and the DPW overall, what's,
Yeah.
you know what I'm
I
asking?
think it's a great
Yeah,
question.
Yeah,
Very fair.
okay. Next up is the bathhouse improvements at Cedar Pond.
Skip
We
that
did that,
one.
yep. Conservation,
The signs.
we have signs at 7 conservation parcels.
I'm going to open up both of the conservation ones at once. All right, so this is a request from Conservation Division for $2,475. And this is to install signage at some of the unused conservation parcels. These aren't the ones that are, you know, it's not the Calorie Darling area. These are unnamed areas. I think in general, these tend to be sites where people may not know they're conservation areas, and there tends to be dumping
Ah,
that happens
okay.
at these sites. So the request here, the description is implement signage for unnamed conservation parcels of land denoting land use, whether there's sensitive habitat, and denoting no dumping. Target parcels generally don't include walkable trails and aren't maintained. Purpose is to provide open space and wildlife habitat for the community. I think when people don't, I think the point here is when people don't know these things are here, it leads to a lot of violations on the site.
Yeah.
So the signs would read, Town of Yarmouth Conservation Area, sensitive air habitat, no dumping. This would happen ASAP, and it just provides education for the community. These are some signs on, you know, that have really kind of outlived their useful life, I think. And it looks like Brittany's gotten a couple of quotes from Simple Signs and Signorama. Signposts are included, and we would do our own installation here together with volunteers, or we could get AmeriCorps involved.
Okay.
So 15 signs.
Does conservation not have money in a budget to do this themselves?
They have a very small budget. It hasn't had any revenue of recent years, but yep, they do have a conservation fund. The town used to, it's well before my time, if you look back through like I think it was mostly in like the 1980s, town meeting would vote to appropriate funds that would go into the conservation fund, which could then get used for acquisitions or projects in the past. And I think as part of the other request, the invasive species, we've leveraged those funds there. It's not a fund that's growing. I think that the Concom does understand they need to use the fund before it gets added to. But
Answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah. And these are all part of the open space?
absolutely part of the open space plan.
Which is just parcels that they're not accessed a lot. Unless people are familiar with them, they probably don't know.
Right.
anything
I
about
think that, you know, I think Brittany said in here, these are sites that are kind of like adjacent to larger conservation areas. You know, if you look at the maps, all the parcels are all divvied up. But these are maybe smaller parcels that aren't focused on so much.
Yeah.
And so, but I think they tend to be dumped on or misused.
Okay.
Just in a general sense, would some of these requests also go to the CPA at all?
This one, so CPA funds cannot be used for maintenance. So to the extent, I don't know about the bathrooms. They can't be used for maintenance. The invasive species request, that's, the next one on the list, has received funding from CPA. I think that with CPA, the appropriations happen basically once a year. And I think this is just a timely source of funds that are available. People are testing the waters. So.
Meaning people see a resource there, so
Well,
they're
they see
gonna apply.
I think they see the funding being available, and it's available
Yep.
tomorrow, basically.
But basically, you're right about that. Does DPW at all make any of its own signs?
We're thinking the same thing. They do make signs. I think they make fewer signs than they used to.
Yeah.
And I don't know with the dimensions, but I think that that's a very good question that we can pose.
Yeah, I think we'd like to ask that and see if something that they're showing here in the back of the application they sent in is doable from the DPW's perspective. Okay.
And is this just a straight replacement of these metal signs, like a traffic sign?
I think it may be,
Is it something a little
I
nicer?
think that that's actually another good question, Joe, because it's, those two pictures, clearly there were signs there, but what I don't know is whether it's all replacement or replacement and new. So maybe we ask the locations
Yeah, and I
and
was just-
whether it's a,
Curious if it was something maybe a little nicer than the green sign too.
I think if it's nicer than the green sign, then DPW doesn't make it.
Doesn't do it? Okay. Yeah,
That's your conundrum.
yep. Okay.
We should be promoting our resources,
Agreed.
Well, that's kind of like a policing sign, though, so.
Right, that's what I'm saying, maybe we make it a little nicer, it's a conservation area.
I want to thank you for pointing out the section 4. This is the use of funds, so I think we have to use that as
Yep.
our guide. It is our guide, so.
So next up, we have
So the next-
invasive
Yeah, the next one is the invasive species.
species management.
So this, and I'm sorry, I'm not as familiar with these as I should be. I've been away. What I understand about invasive species management and is it's, as I mentioned to Peter's question, it's something we've funded before. So everybody, I don't know if everybody knows what Phragmites looks like and the choke that it puts on the flow of water. So in general, invasive species kind of remedies help to improve water quality. They improve flushing. Through this, Brittany outlined previous sites where we've done this type of thing. Invasive species management generally takes about 3 years of work because it's an iterative process. It's very labor intensive. It involves hand cutting and treating, and then that's 3 times.
Right,
You
right.
have to be very careful when you start this process. It generally starts after the growing season. It's a very short window. I think it's generally August or September that you would start. So the proposal here is for 2 new sites at Kroll Pond, one at Meadowbrook, a new area at the Taylor Bray Farm, and kind of continued treatment at Alms House Road. I think that Brittany has put in some pictures, and we're really lucky here. Brittany is our conservation administrator, and she does have a lot of experience from her previous work overseeing these types of projects. So Run and Kroll Pond, if folks are familiar with this, this is Run Pond Road over here, and you can see the area in red. This is the area that would be treated. And then again, over here, this is just opposite, almost opposite the blue water, where the blue water is. These are what it looks like right now. The idea is to get rid of the Phragmites. This is, you can't really see very well.
Okay.
The feathery stuff is the Phragmites.
Right.
And if we can treat it, you kind of open up the view to
Right.
the pond. Meadowbrook Conservation Area, this was a different area, I think here was treated previously. This is very overgrown. Again, you can see the aerial. Here's Meadowbrook Road, it comes down to the park. This red area is what has been proposed to be treated. So that's a big area. Let's see, here's the view from the end of the boardwalk. Another view from the boardwalk. You can see the view's really impeded. Taylor Bray Farm, I believe that this red area, and so if you go up to Taylor Bray Farm and you go out on the little boardwalk that's there, this was an area that was previously treated, that's in red. And the work that was done there was really pretty successful, and the view there is great. This area to the west would be kind of new work, and it really would, it would open things up.
Is that yellow area that's outlined, is that?
I believe that's what she says, a small additional area will be proposed for treatment, shown in yellow.
Is that private property or?
Nope, that's the town's property. So you can kind of see here, these are some old pictures. This was part of the old effort. This picture on the left was pre-treatment, and then post-treatment, just adjacent to the boardwalk, is on the right. And this is the view to that little bit on the west, the yellow parcel, that's being proposed to be
So-
treated here.
Couple of questions. I see in here it's a 3-year management plan, so query, is this going to be an expectation every 3 years? And is this just 3-year, are these projects part of a larger group of potential sites that require this mitigation? And because if that is the case, again, the notion of one-off is not necessarily as appealing to me as something that is more programmatic, and the monies are going to something that is, again, not one-off. That's it's more of an investment. Those are my comments and questions.
Okay.
Are we the only ones being asked to fund this?
I was just going to ask that.
No, and I'm looking for the budget here, because I thought,
It says several funding sources were secured, including Land Bank, Conservation Fund, CEDC, I don't know where that comes from,
That was-
CPA.
That was in
no, it
2018.
was CEDC funded some of the previous work.
Oh, really?
Remember the pictures for Taylor Bray Farm, 2013 to 19?
Yeah.
CEDC did chip in.
From this pool of money,
Yes.
or another, okay.
Yep.
But it wasn't all entirely funded with CEDC funds?
No.
Right.
And it's just, I'm scanning the application. She noted here at their meeting last week, Concom voted $10,000 from the Conservation Fund. That would be a 25% match for this.
Got it.
And I can ask Brittany, I think that there are so many sites. Ever since I learned about Phragmites, all I do is see Phragmites everywhere. And I think that what Conservation Division tried to do here is prioritize the locations that are most beneficial from a resident and visitor point of view.
Yeah, so that would be my point again, is to tie into something bigger. Right.
Is Meadowbrooks the exact same area that they had done originally?
That
It looks like it's saying that the invasive Phragmites had returned. So I'm just curious if it didn't work the first time, if we're doing anything different, or if there's a reason it would work a second time that it didn't work the first.
Yep, I think that's a great question.
So if
I don't know
Concom,
the answer, Danielle, but Brittany should.
if Concom gave 10, they committed 10, so they only need 30 now, not 40? Or is this 40 in addition to their other sources?
No, I think that the request would be 30 from you guys, the way I read the budget. Because the total is 40. Brittany referenced in the, she referenced the 25% match, so I think we can confirm that.
Confirmed, yep. Okay.
Has the land bank expended their funds for '24?
Land bank funds, we don't have any new land bank funds. Land bank was the predecessor to the Community Preservation Act.
Okay, so CPA?
So there's a small balance, but land bank funds can only be used on land bank properties. So, properties that were acquired from the land bank. So even, for instance, I can give you a good example, if the parks in West Yarmouth, and Brittany mentions those, and we just don't have good values on those, as part of like where we're redeveloping the parks at Yankee Village, Chasebrook Park, and Mill Creek Park. Of those 3 parcels, 2 were acquired with CPA, but Chasebrook Park was acquired with land bank. So we can use land banks at that location, any balances that we have, but it's very, the fund is drying up.
Okay. Any other questions on that? We good to go on to the next one? Infrastructure from DPW and Community Development, Riverwalk Park and Event Space.
Okay. This is the biggest request.
Yeah, it looks like it's utilities,
Pull it up.
3-phase power for a temporary event stage, water and electric food trucks and vendors, lighting, grading, loaming. That's a tall order.
It's a tall order, it's and I don't think that we attached the full budget, but you guys are generally familiar with that. So
Yeah.
there is a small budget here for just the event space at the very end of this application package, but reminder that we have secured CPA funding. We made a promise to town meeting to keep looking for additional funds. It's nice to couple every source that we can find. And the budget here really is $10-12 million at this
Right.
point for the whole thing. It's a lot of money. But I think that the request here is wholly targeted at the event space, which is something the committees talked quite a bit about in the past. And I don't know
So
if you guys have questions.
I do. But anyone, go ahead, Joey, go ahead.
I get, so this is all within the scope of the original project. It's just, you're just now looking for another funding source to fund this.
The construction part.
Okay, so there is no funding for, but this was originally part of that drive-in site, the reutilization, the whole project included this.
Yes. The project didn't initially include the event space, but it's been expanded to include the event space.
All right, so there was never any money thought about for this event space, as far as that plan?
Until recently. It was part of the funding that was approved at the town meeting, for instance.
So this last town meeting,
Correct.
which is quite a bit. So they have about $12 million in hand. So this is to offset part of that $12 million, or in addition to that
I
12?
believe it's to offset.
And the ask is among all the other asks of their plan to, like, say, get money for bricks and with naming rights, et cetera, et cetera.
That's all part of their current work. They're really working on revenue generation.
Right.
How are we going to maintain this site? The concept is we'd like any revenues that are generated off of this to go towards maintenance.
You better,
Yeah,
you
I
have more
think-
familiarity
I
with
think
this, yeah.
what we need to do is, in all fairness, Karen, this isn't this isn't her project, it's Kathy Williams, who's really the captain of the ship on this one, and she probably is better to answer some of the questions here, but
Oh, absolutely.
Well, what I wanted to know is, Joe started on it, Is this in addition to, is it augmenting the overall cost? More specific than that, though, one of the things that we talked about potentially was an application to the state on mass development, one of their infrastructure. We pulled back on that primarily because we didn't want to compete with the town in its wastewater application. But what I was asking about, is this money, the $200,000, is going for infrastructure, which is power and other, is it going to power up the whole site, or is it just going to be for the park part of the project? I think it's for the whole site, but I just want to make sure of that. A, and B, if it's not covering the entire cost of pulling in the infrastructure for that, are we short, and can we go after an application? And I was told we didn't want to do anything like that because we might be interfering with some of the other funding sources. We don't want to do any of that. We don't want to interfere with any of the funding sources. But
Mr.
if we can
Chairman.
augment some of the other funding sources, then I think we should do that. But again, that's the questions for Kathy.
Sure.
Okay, I'd just like to clarify, as somebody who worked for the Massachusetts Office of
Yep.
Housing and Economic Development and with Mass Development, there is no competition between the towns asking for mass development funds if in fact it has other applications in to other state agencies. And I swear by that. That's
Yeah.
factual. So,
So-
with that being said,
Yeah.
you raise an excellent point. So instead of tapping into this particular tourism beautification funds, this committee does have the opportunity to propose to the selectmen another application to achieve the same results.
Right.
To the funding for the lighting. So, and it's just an allocation of resources, and I think that's our responsibility to tap into every opportunity that we possibly can, so.
So you just want to know if the 200,000, in the end, would the 200,000 be bringing in power enough to accommodate a band at the event space, at the stage? Those type of questions. So we can ask in more detail. Any other questions on that one? Okay, if not, we go on to signs. $9,476.
Signs. All right, so this one's from the Yarmouth Historical Commission.
Right.
They've asked for funding for interpretive signs, and they give an example of what an interpretive sign is. So if you want to go check it out, there's a great example at Indian Memorial, and this was funded, I forget how that was funded. I will find out how that one was funded. I think that was a CPA project. I'm certain it was, that funded this sign. So Historical Commission has some relatively current cost estimates based on this work. And let's see. They have a budget. They'd like to install one sign at the Judah-Baker Windmill, another at and then 3 signs at the Baxter Grist Mill. Baxter Grist Mill isn't just the Baxter Grist Mill building itself. Remember that it's a really thin stretch of land that goes along Route 28 and goes back out to the parking lot, so that when you park your car, you'd be walking past site amenities. And then one for the Bass River Salt Works and Magnesia Industry. I'm not sure where that one is proposed to be located.
It says that windmill site, so,
At the windmill site as well, thank you.
in the brackets. Yeah, I was trying to figure out what that was myself.
Yeah, so,
Okay. Does this include installation? Is that apparent to
I
everybody, or?
believe it does.
I don't know.
Okay.
Good question.
Well, could you confirm?
Yeah, we can confirm, there's, I'm happy to confirm there's a quote for installation in the packet.
Actually, it says in-kind staff volunteer labor where appropriate.
In kind. Well,
Well, there's an
that's what
email
that's
from-
what I can't seem to get my eyes on. Oh, it does. It says install. No, my eyes are on it now. Oh, sorry.
I will confirm regardless.
Oh, you didn't see it? Okay. Yep, okay, that's clear.
We good? Any other questions on that?
Do projects like this return money to us if they don't use it?
Sure, because I think in general, and, this is the strategy with CPA, we always say, just like the first motion that Maria made for the bathhouse, you recommend an up to limit. So if they don't spend it, it comes back. And it would all get returned to the Public Improvements Fund.
Do they come back to us and present their final budget and project?
If you would like them to do that, I'm sure they'd be happy
I
to do
just don't know
that.
what that's.
No,
normal
we
course of meeting.
Sometimes we do.
So I'm just drawing the parallels from CPA. With CPA, we ask for updates along the way. Funding is usually a much bigger nut than the figures we're talking about. And if there's a project that takes a long time, so like, for instance, the invasive species project, if you opt to fund that, that one makes perfect sense. It's going to take 3 years, so get an update every year and find out what'd you do this year and how's it going and what's going to happen next year. If they complete it, then for sure, you could get a report, you could do site visits and go out and see these things that you've funded.
Just another,
Go ahead, Joe.
so they apply for CPA funding also for these signs? Is that what that page there is?
They have not applied for CPA funding for these as of yet. I don't know why that's on there. I don't know if it was a carryover. And two, this implementation is
Multi-year, okay.
July of '23. I don't recall if they were working on an application for CPA and pulled it.
Okay, yeah, it just said CPA grant right above that
Yeah, I see
implementation,
that
so.
right here.
At
So-
least one site's the same, the Judah Baker window. The top
Oh,
line on
this
that
w-
one is the same as, right?
This was maybe a much bigger scope with all of these locations. They did not submit this application. It's coming back. They discussed it and they didn't proceed.
So that looks
This
maybe
is-
like their master plan, that's what they want to do
Agreed.
everywhere, but they're just looking at a few of the things to us, is what I'd guess.
That's my understanding. But you could ask, I think that, again, that's a good question, if this is kind of their master plan and they've just picked their priority locations.
Any other questions on signs? If not, then we'll do DPW on the Taylor Bray Farm cottage roof, and there's another one on the,
Right. There's
Barn roof.
two roofs. I'm pretty familiar with these. Let me pull those up. So the Taylor Bray Farm is located on the north side, you guys all know this, in the Old Kings Highway district. We've had conversations with the Old Kings Highway folks, and they are very firm on their desire that these be cedar roofs that are installed. So we can talk about, I'm just trying to open these first. I can't talk and click. The first one is just the cottage. So when you're driving on, just so folks know, when you're driving down to the Taylor Bray Farm, there's two structures off to the left. That's the farmhouse and the barn. The structure on the right is the cottage. The roof was done a few years ago, not a few years ago, it was done 15 years ago, and it is in need of a new roof. We've recently replaced the roof, we've recently repaired the roof. We were able to do that through a donated service from a local contractor who did a great job. and that meets our short-term needs in terms of just keeping the building sound. It is in need of a new roof. Jeff put this together. We, a while back in February, had a roof inspector go around to almost all of the town buildings. So we have a very current estimate on what this would cost. And it is, Jeff's put in a request for $40,000. The word in February was that it needed a full exterior renovation. The roof is of particular need. We've recently removed the gutters to just to eliminate the problem with the gutters. The barn that we're working on a larger scale rehab project is not going to have the gutters either. It wasn't necessary. I'm not sure when they went in. But it is in fairly rough shape. And, I think with this one, with a lot of these, are there other funds we'll probably put in through capital budget? But I think it's important to make you guys aware of these things. And if you see fit to fund it, it would be wonderful. Maybe it's something that you want to consider funding in part at some point.
That's a good point. Any questions on the cottage roof?
Does somebody still live in the cottage?
There's no one in the cottage right now. The caretakers, the McIntyres, were the last folks to live there. And right now, the association is using the space while the barn is under construction. So a lot of the equipment and supplies are in there.
I would like to, at some point, or I'm not quite sure how, have a broader discussion about all the available sources of funding, because I would hate any one group to think that they need to go forum shopping, right? And I think I need to know a little bit more about the CPA. I know I pay an awful lot for it, and there's seems to be excesses, and I'd like to know a little bit more about what that group is, their priority of their projects. I don't know, I think this is kind of like Peter's questions, is like, so what are the other organization, sources of funding? And just to have a better clarity for this group, and then relative to as I said, the statute as our guide would be helpful to me. So Karen, perhaps just an overview of all of the CPA group, and you had mentioned the capital plan, what are the priorities? So to get a better understanding how this fits in the larger opportunities of funding, for me, anyway.
No,
I think
probably.
it's a great point, and it's something that I've been talking about. I think it's really important to integrate all these funds and have them complement one another. I think that with CPA, just to make that point, CPA and capital budget are appropriated basically once a year, and they're appropriated at town meeting. This fund is a lot more flexible because you've got your appropriation. It's more restrictive now than it used to be because you've appropriated to the individual buckets, but that funding's available immediately. And I think when there's a need that's time sensitive, this may be a good place to look.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as we don't become sort of a catch-all for, the conservation signs. Those have been falling down for years. So they could have, in a timely manner, addressed that years prior.
This is the first time, and, I want to, I'd applaud the committee for kind of going this route because largely, by and large, it's been kind of a source of funding that's tapped by request. And this way, you've kind of, broadcast the availability of the fund, and you've got all these applications to consider all at once. It gives you a flavor for what are the needs that are out there, and is your fund is it a good complement to those needs? But this is the first time we've kind of done a broadcast ask, so people don't necessarily know the funding is here.
I'd like to just make another point. I used to work at the sheriff's office, and they had a division, construction, where you would request, and I'm not sure if that it has started up again post-COVID, but that is another obvious source of funding, and again, good work, how we can rehabilitate our young people. So this would be such a perfect project, assuming that the sheriff's office has their construction project going again. So I'm just going to take it upon myself to inquire, if you don't
No,
mind.
good,
And I'll
thank you.
report
And we would
back.
buy the
I'll report
materials.
back. Exactly. And you buy the kids pizza, you buy
Yeah,
them
always
lunch.
lunch,
And
yeah.
they're supervised, but it's just a great way to contribute back to the community, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just my only comment on this is really, I guess I kind of go back to like that beautification, and I kind of always envision this money more as enhancing things. To me, like a roof, this is deferred maintenance. This is not, I don't think, what the intent was years ago to do with this money. I think, making things nice, making it look presentable, letting the citizens know that, maybe there's a conservation area that you never knew that was there. Things like that are enhancing the town. I think that we just need to be careful about what we're funding, for, as like I said, deferred maintenance type of thing. Because there are other buckets of money, and, this money, we haven't really gone crazy about spending it in the past, and now we have quite a bit of money in the bank for it. So I think we just should be, I guess we all have our own opinions on it, but my thing is more, I'd like to see it more used as enhancements. But
Right.
that's just me, and not necessarily deferred maintenance. Some of this stuff should go through the process. But that said, as Karen said, bringing some of this stuff to our fact that, hey, these are things that need to get done, I think is important also. And I don't want to discourage anybody from putting any applications in, because I think that this is eye-opening in a way also, even if we don't fund it. It's educational, at least to me.
Yep. No, good point, Joe, thank you. We okay on the barn roof then? Do we need to go over the barn roof as well, or? No, okay, all right. That said then, do we want to, well, Karen, you suggested June 27th is vote on public improvements. Do we want to wait till that time, the 27th, decide, or do we want to have a meeting prior to that to talk about these? What's your flavor?
Or, I mean, if you want, what we can do is, so I've been obviously taking notes, and we have the questions. I'll send those out to the applicants, and do you want to invite them in so that you can answer?
Probably enough. I think the date is good to give enough time for her to get her responses.
The 27th?
Yeah, here. Sorry. See?
I'm just wondering, does this committee want to have another meeting prior to the 27th to talk? I would suggest if we do, invite the people in to talk about their projects if they want to come before us, so we can ask them questions, and ask, the relevant department heads as well to come in, and we can ask them questions, and then we can formally meet again on the 27th and vote, if that's what you want to do. So that's a suggestion. Okay.
Are any of these time sensitive? They couldn't be
I think
pushed off
that,
till,
I think that the Sandy Pond was the most time-sensitive.
And she got to
I
go ahead.
don't know that the others are.
Bray
as-
Farm's not going
as-
to start a project before the end of the summer, so.
And just the only other piece of information that I'll give you, I'm not sure what was in the packet, on the barn roof. We will be going out to bid for the barn rehab. And we had $400,000 approved at the annual town meeting from CPA funds for this project.
Right.
CPA's been, they funded the first phase, which was the foundation repair. That was, it involved lifting the barn, putting in a new foundation, moving the barn back, shoring that up, all very necessary structural repairs. This phase two that we're working on, and got the $400,000 in funding at the town meeting. We have a cost estimate, And we're a little bit concerned where the bids are going to come in. And so it may be another situation where, we have a contractor on site, have the project bid out, and may not have funding for this. The cedar roofs are so expensive.
No, it's a
I
cedar.
can't believe how much they cost.
It's
But
a
they
cedar.
look beautiful.
Yep.
And they, are very historic in nature. So I don't know about next week and room availability. I know that the selectmen are meeting, we're at if rooms were on short availability before, they're even more so. The town administrator's office has moved temporarily into room A, so we don't have the room A for a meeting space. The selectmen are meeting in here on the 20th. The planning board meets in here on the 21st. I know the zoning board of appeals meets in here on the 22nd.
So Karen, relative to that, the design review committee is meeting at DPW.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's a location that we could
That's
possibly
an
meet.
option.
Yeah.
Happy to look into that. I don't have access to their availability right.
No. So do we want to give Karen a couple of dates that we can work off of prior to the 27th? So that would be next week sometime, the 19th through the 22nd.
What else do we think we would have on the agenda for the 27th if,
Well, I have one thing. I know you're working on the application for the Chamber of Commerce, so do we want to, on their contract, I'm sorry. You're not working on that?
No, Mary and I
Okay.
talked about having the chamber come in to do an update to
Right.
the committee
Right, that's what I was getting at.
on the prior year.
That's what I was,
Just to update the group, and you have a lot of new people so that they understand
Right.
the,
That's where I was
all the
going.
work that the chamber does.
that's where I was
Yeah.
going.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
so, do we want to do that on the 27th as well? Yes, no? Okay.
I want to just, if I can park you for a moment, because the next, so we have the budget, and then the item number 5, I think, that's on your agenda. 5, special event program. So at a selectmen's meeting some time ago, the St. Patrick's Day Parade was in, and it precipitated a conversation about the tourism fund, and, in particular, I watched the meeting. I'm happy to share the meeting link and time so folks can see it if you haven't seen it. The St. Patrick's Day Parade made a pitch for starting the grant process for special events. Earlier in the year, they articulated a need for additional funds. I know that, I think Joe and Maria, you guys were working on looking at the special event materials. That's morphed into a request from the Board of Selectmen for an update from CEDC that would happen on the 20th or the 27th of this month. So,
I'd like to, if you don't mind, we have an item on our agenda and we have our presenters here. Could we table what Karen just talked about and a
Come back
potential
around.
meeting date to have the gentleman give us just a brief update? I mean, they've been
Okay.
patiently waiting here, so
You guys okay with that?
if we can circle
Okay,
back
so we'll
to
come
the
back.
dates and what Karen is just.
So we'll hold on item number 3 and the meeting dates on that, and then we'll go to item number 6, 897 Route 28, proposed 40B application. Sir?
So, I think it's just a, can you, Mr. Chairman, what, it's on the agenda, but do we have a special charge? What are we being asked to do? Do you?
I think we're just, go ahead.
I'd like to just give you some background. In your packet, there's a copy of the letter from Mass Housing talking about this project, which has been, application has been filed to do a 40B development for 23 units of housing at 897 Route 28. The process right now is the town has 30 days till the end of the month to provide comment to Mass Housing. We've met internally. I'm sure we will be meeting more frequently. And these guys have been nice enough to visit with the Community Housing Committee. I think you were just meeting with the Affordable Housing Trust. I think you're meeting with, on the 20th, we're going to do a staff level site plan review to review the plans that have been submitted and take a look at regulatory issues and identify, just have a look. The 21st, they're going to go and meet with the planning board. Staff will work on consolidating various comments for the Board of Selectmen's consideration to submit back to Mass Housing. To that end, and to answer Maria's question about what's the charge, if you'd like to make a comment and you want to submit a memo that, you could direct it to the Board of Selectmen and we'll fold it in to the Selectmen's letter.
Right, that's good. So we're kind of listening, when there's no regulatory aspects from this committee that you have to comply with it all. So we're just kind of overseeing the community development, economic development for the town. So as your project relates to that, then that's music to our ears, so.
Why don't you stop, Brian, and I'll try to.
My name is Brian Braggington Smith, born and raised here in Yarmouth, graduated from DY. I've been involved in energy and water in particular, and am quite familiar with the issues that are facing our town from a standpoint of the need for economic development, the need for us to be able to address some of these issues, water, the climate, the such, and it all kind of connects. So that's kind of what we're talking about is dealing with a lot of these issues and not just doing it a one-off, but looking at it from a holistic perspective. Mm-hmm. Where do we want to be? And who do we want to be, and help to become that. So that's kind of what we're all about. Okay. And I guess turn it over to Mr. Cleary here.
And Paul Cleary, Autonomous CRE and Nantucket Sound Group. And I think it's probably helpful it's mostly a new board, but the first time that we came into any board in town, it was the Community and Economic Development Group. And it was an extension of some of the opportunity overlay and the hotel motel 1 overlay and the Village 3 overlays. And Maria, going back to when Mass Development came down at the chamber in the morning, this intersection of Long Pond and 28 and this property's at Pine Grove, that was talk of that little node as being a catalyst project, and that was January 23rd, 2019, where Mass Development came down. Maria was in her other role as Southeastern Mass or South Coast, whatever that label was, and how do we bring, as you were talking a little bit earlier, how do we bring these connected, integrated resources so that we can deal with the lack of infrastructure? There's an opportunity in energy, and we have this opportunity of what are our villages going to look like. And that led to, all sorts of additional meetings. So it looks today like it's a 40B comprehensive application to just one parcel of land somewhere in Yarmouth. Granted, it's an important district in Yarmouth, but it looks like one parcel of land in Yarmouth. But there's been collectively a lot of time spent on looking at these various nodes and what could we do in these nodes to build the next generation village of what we want in the VC1, the 2, the 3, the 4, and the 5. So this is basically our first building and our first attempt. And I think we have a lot of things on our side. When I say that, not just us as a developer, but the town and the various boards have a lot on there, a lot of momentum behind them, because the new governor's office, their priorities are, the number one priority is climate and clean energy, which brings us over to CVAC and Cape Light Compact, and we all know there's been what's now at the 2255 stage, there's been a 4 or 5 year study that the distribution lines on all of Barnstable County are substandard, which leads to whatever that request, the $200,000 request you have in front of you for putting
Infrastructure.
infrastructure into the, like, that's a problem everywhere throughout Barnstable County. And right now, the 2255, Eversource is trying to put $170 million of additional line upgrade on top of every property down here on the Cape. Now, the Attorney General is arguing back that it should only be $9 million for these big projects, and Eversource wants 170 to basically rewire the whole island. So you don't know until that issues from the DPU what the final answer is going to be, 9 or 170, but it is held up. I think it's 70 megawatts of clean, renewable energy that developers have had for Barnstable County. That is a lot of money that would have rolled in taxes, would have rolled in upgrades, would have rolled in a lot of things. So somehow economic development gets impacted over and over and over and over and over again by where's the money and how do you put the money in place. But the governor's office focuses climate and clean energy because they know there's a lot of federal money behind that. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Act is for projects, big projects like you're doing, and then a way to help fund them is the Inflation Reduction Act funding, where there's tax equity available to help build out projects because they're based in infrastructure that is clean energy. So that's kind of the planning we've been doing. We've been at this planning for 10 years. So when we get a building permit somewhere, it's going to be an overnight success. But trust me, there's years of design, thought, and effort laid behind the infrastructure that's actually needed to then lead to the second thing that the governor's office wants is affordable and abundant housing. Well, what's affordable housing, right? Well, what does it cost you to live in that shell, in that neighborhood, month to month or week to week? That has to be figured out if you're truly going to have affordable housing. So what we think we've done is we've figured out a way to, instead of having costs inside a building be variable, subject to the monopoly utilities going up in their pricing all the time, we've focused on the mechanical, the electrical, and the plumbing, which I don't know if you guys were involved at all in voting for commercial property assessed clean energy, the PACE program that is in and available in Yarmouth. Think of the PACE program, the type of equipment that is eligible for financing under that. It's also eligible for these Inflation Reduction Act funding. So what we did is we focused on how do we retool our buildings from the mechanical and the electrical and the plumbing standpoint, and how do we build high-performance buildings, energy-efficient buildings that are designed to be low footprint, net zero, but you can't have net zero if you're not tying into a net zero grid. So on-site, tucked behind those roofs, like we've done at 42 Midtech up in the industrial park, solar on the roof, feeding into the mechanical systems in the building, powering as much of that building with on-site generation. That's the future. Tie it together. Tie your infrastructure, tie your energy back to your new construction. And I think it's easier to get there with new construction, but most of what state aid is out there is, what are you going to do when you put, in effect, rip out all these systems and replace them? Well, my house, 125 years old, there's one of those big looks like a spaceship down in my basement. It's run on oil. I'm not spending 50 grand to rip out my mechanical systems if I can spend that 50 grand on a new car or something. You know, like, people make these type of decisions. The easiest way to accelerate into the future is in new construction. We have things like the stretch code. We now have 10 communities in the state that have been allowed to, new construction has to be all electric. This project and the other projects that we're hoping to bring forward are based on what does the future look like on these net zero grid buildings. So that's a 62 by 104 building right now, as I had here before. It's positioned right on the sidewalk of 28. There's been a lot of feedback that they don't, you know, whoever would like to see that kind of repositioned because it's kind of looks weird that it's tying into the existing building. So after our meetings yesterday and today, we'll go back to a little bit of a redesign here and reposition the building. But the overall general concept is we work in these bays. Each bay of that building is 13 feet by 65 feet in depth, so that you can, once you find the Lego blocks of where you're gonna put your building on the site, you can just go out in 13-foot increments and design a building, 1 story, 2 stories, 3 stories, 4 stories, 5 stories, just all your mechanicals stack on top of that building, and then you build everything into that building so that it's a high-performance building. At the beginning of the year, we were working with Mass Save and Cape Light on this specific building on, you know, where does it qualify for what programs of Mass Save and Cape Light. So you just keep working on what do these buildings look like in the future. That's building number 1. We've done it under a comprehensive permit, which I don't think is it seems like people hear 40B and comp permit and they always think it's just like a fight and it's confrontational as people, you know, jam something. The bones of the district are in place between all the village overlays and the hotel motel overlays. The bones are there, and over time, with some modification to zoning, you'll get better results. Like Barnstable just went through at the beginning of the year with a form-based code bylaw as opposed to a strict box bylaw of how that works. So this basically boils down to form and parking. As long as you can figure out a way to configure that form and that parking, that project works. They don't limit it on other things. And that was a result of the Smart Growth America work and study back to 2019. So it's all layers and layer of planning on top of this one single building.
Yep.
But we don't plan on building just one single building. We have to be evaluated in this response to mass housing on this one building.
So, do we have any questions at all at this
I
point?
do.
Okay.
This is a prime location in where the town has decided to locate a DIF.
Yep.
And in that formula is additional property taxes. So to the extent that this would, you know, if it contributes to the DIF, then that certainly helps us with that overall economic development plan. But can you share with this committee why it doesn't seem like it's a mixed use? Why not mixed use? Is there any opportunity for offices, retail establishment? And I see there's somewhat of a constraint with parking, but talk to us about what this committee is responsible for, attracting economic businesses and stimulating economic development. How does that fit in?
So that by itself is economic development, because what's situated in that existing building right now are 2 businesses. One that's in the real estate business, one's in the technology business, and they both headquartered in there because their opportunity zone businesses to grow out and out of that property. So it selected that property for the tax benefits that the Opportunity Zone provides. That, I don't know how you went about getting that designation, Karen, but that was a whole process.
To apply.
Yeah, well, it was a little,
Essentially.
it was a little more than that.
Well,
You
no,
ha-
actually it wasn't, but that's okay. But it was targeted, again, it was a targeted area. So, question, are the spaces available, I'm just seeing only apartments. Are you intending to include any commercial space in
Right
this
now, there's a
building?
3,600 square foot commercial building on it already, an existing building. That was the washer, dryer, laundry center.
Oh, so that's gonna stay?
That
Or
is
depending upon
staying,
what you
right.
say, you're gonna make some adjustments?
Yeah. So financing, what your question is, it is very difficult to finance commercial buildings right now. The commercial financing world is starting to head in the same direction as '07 and '08. There are massive defaults on commercial, and they're all coming up where they need. So a bank doesn't want to do a mixed-use building right now.
So I'm a little,
So you're doing one resident,
it's gonna be on this
One
space.
residential building
One residential
and one
building.
commercial building, and that way you can get one bank to look at this commercial building, and you can get the residential housing people to look at
So the
at this
commercial building is the existing building? And
Yes.
will there be any renovation and these upgrades through the PACE program to that existing building?
That's where we started. We have a term sheet from True Green. No, yeah, was it True Green? We have a term sheet from Hannon Armstrong for like 1.7 in upgrades to that
And
building.
then in that commercial building, you said there are 2 existing tenants, correct?
Our businesses are in that.
Your businesses are. So will there be any room for any additional commercial tenants?
We had designed it in keeping with the hospitality desire of the VC3 for another restaurant. And in our design, it was an oyster bar, like the Oyster Man in Duxbury.
So there will be additional space for another commercial use?
Yeah, that's a 3,600 square foot building, and it's kind of set up that it's 1,800 going this way and 1,800 going this way. So
Okay.
it sets up,
You would-
it sets up as 2 areas, office over here and restaurant over here is what yeah.
And just one other comment is that, yes, in my former role, working for the Baker Polito Administration and Economic Development, this group, and represented actually by 2 of our Yarmouth residents, one of them, I think, has left, just very diligent and well thought out. And so I just am personally think this is advantageous that the project contains commercial opportunities for existing and new businesses. So to the extent that it does, and it meets all the other requirements in the town, I would endorse this project
Okay.
for the commercial, reasons, yeah.
Thanks, Maria. Any other questions from anybody? I have a couple. Why are you selecting my question is this, is wastewater prompting you to do this project now, the wastewater? No.
We were actually spent 5 years where we would have done, that the interesting thing what Brian did back in 1994 is he set up a wastewater system where we could process gray water in the washer
Yep.
dryer.
Yep.
And that gray water was being reused every time those washing machines would run. In that 20-plus year, you can reuse black water. So we had a system designed to put in and replace the old water reuse system. And if the wastewater hadn't gone through, we had planned and planned and planned
So you had a
for-
backup plan?
We had a backup plan, and we're fully committed as that this is a diff. We supported the diff at the beginning, so, you know, you have a little more density on a property because you don't have to have your effluent discharge, your waste, and your reuse areas. And now you're paying your betterment and connecting into the, like, I don't think we'd be talking about this project if you had a wastewater system, however many years ago. I don't think this property would have been available if there was a wastewater.
Right.
So now that there is a wastewater, you leverage the wastewater, and the value creation
Yeah.
helps pay back that diff.
Right.
And we filed to the state for the one-stop underutilized properties, and the town has applied for a MassWorks grant for something, and so now the shoulders of 28 are trying to help with the infrastructure corridor of 28.
Good for you guys for applying for that. That's heads up, play by you guys. Nice work. Parking on-site, you can accommodate all the parking for the units that you're talking about on-site?
That is also a work in process.
Okay.
In that the VC3 does allow for kind of off-site parking. So has that off-site parking been secured yet? No, it hasn't. But it's on-site, and then what do you have to secure off-site to make it work?
Okay.
So we know we have that weakness, and some of our designs, not this configuration and not that design, we are very focused on just underground parking. So if you're gonna build a structure, build a nice enough below grade parking, and that covers a lot of the
Weight
parking
restrictions, yep, yep,
upstairs.
yep. Good,
Now,
good.
that leads to when you go and
problem.
dig, what happens? How early do you hit water?
Right.
And what are you gonna run into? So,
Yep. So
Yeah.
you're looking at it, okay. You know, we talked about economic development. We're all about economic development and how we can tie back into things that help foster and create economic development opportunities in the town. One of the big stumbling blocks in the town, at least for one sector of the business community, is the restaurants and getting help and maintaining that help. Some people couldn't do that, and they've gone out of business, some owners of the restaurants. What's your intent to market? Where are you at in the market to rent?
so 25% of the building, units, 23 units, 6 of them are affordable.
Okay,
Okay, I don't think that handles and addresses that workforce,
yeah,
that type of workforce, but the units have been designed as workforce housing units, so they're smaller units to start with, because, you know, you have a lot of single or two people living in a smaller unit geared to workforce. And that's a big market opportunity, that there is a missing part of that missing middle on workforce housing, whether it is the summer, extra help, or it's just workforce housing in general.
Would you consider going above the minimum requirement there on the affordable housing? To something a little bit higher?
It's this rock and a hard place thing, in that once you go above it, where the money really to be made, if you're just, greedy developer and ignore the mixed use component of it, is you go all affordable, and you secure the low-income housing tax credits, and that becomes a major piece of your capital stack. This specific lot, I don't think that's the goal of increasing the affordability. This is geared to 25% affordable, but it's the 80% of area median income, rather than if you make that next financing leap to the 50 and 60% of area median income. So we are trying to focus somewhat on that market side, just like the hotel renovation down on South Shore Drive. You are trying to bring a new wallet to town that does have some money in their pocket to spend in this mixed-use
Understood,
village.
understood.
So that,
I'm just trying to
that's not a
balance.
final answer, that's
Okay.
just to say what our thought was on how we put our mix together.
Just trying to balance things, some of the need in the community that some of the restaurant owners are experiencing versus what you're doing there. I should have said this, we should have said this earlier, apologies. Thank you for considering Yarmouth. You could have gone someplace else probably to do this project, but you did it here, so thank you for doing that.
There's a reason that, as Karen knows, when the opportunity zones issued, I went to probably 35 communities and walked right in and introduced myself and basically tried to figure out why and how they just filled out the application, okay? There were only two that had a clue as to, like, I met immediately that day Karen, and there was a reason why it was done in Yarmouth, okay? The only other community I found the person who actually did it was in North Attleboro. Not to pick on another town, but I went into Bourne, nobody knew who filed. They actually filed for Main Street in Buzzards Bay, and I have no idea this happened, but Main Street in Buzzards Bay didn't get an opportunity zone designation. The base got a designation. So somebody was looking at the applications because I saw the Bourne one. Yeah, here's our opportunity zone, Main Street, and here's this 20,000 square foot abandoned base as the actual opportunity zone. So there was, and then Tom lives on South Street and Brian's over here in Hyannis Park, and we would drive by and see the for sale sign and we'd be like,
Good.
and then finally in January of 19, we bought it. And, you know, our eyes are always open for the next one, but you can't get too far ahead of yourself.
Right, okay. Thank you. Any other questions, comments, thoughts? We good? All right, so at some point, go ahead, Maria.
Well, this is an opportunity to provide to Mass Housing any comments, and are you asking for this committee specifically, Karen, or just feedback to the selectmen about?
We're going through the selectmen.
Okay,
So if you'd like to make a comment, you could direct it to the selectmen.
okay, so, I think that and I'm not quite sure how you want to do it, but to the extent that that the project will include a commercial opportunity, that we certainly encourage, or I don't want to say endorse, but specifically, that where a project will expand or enhance the commercial opportunities in the town of Yarmouth, that we ask the selectmen to, give it extra eyes, or, I'm losing the words right now.
Support.
Support. Come on, there's Joe, my wordsmith, back up here, so.
Right, so, do we put a letter together from us to the Board of Selectmen? Okay, yeah, so the extent
so-
that we can encourage through this development, economic development opportunities, as Maria was pointing out, as well as looking at the balance between the market rate housing versus affordable housing, how that mixes in with the site, and the parking requirements, we're supportive of the project. Yes? Good?
I don't really want to comment about the affordable housing aspect of it. I don't think that's within our wheelhouse. But,
Okay, well,
so I would make a motion that we,
I don't, just before you make a motion, I don't know that we're going to support a project that still is, the town is formulating their comments and their concerns and questions. I mean, I was at the site visit this morning, and I don't know that, what is our motion going to be?
that, just as a general comment about where projects are going to have a commercial aspect, we encourage the people to come forward with applications that promote and offer opportunities for commercial development. So, I mean, I do hear what you're saying, because it's not
Right.
defined yet.
I don't want there to be misunderstanding that this board endorsed this project, or there was a motion, it was approved, I don't think, I'm not looking to do that. I don't think, everything you just said is really what this board does for every project, right? So I just think it's pretty early to be,
And what we talked about in affordable housing is that right now, everything is in these little silos, right? Like, we're talking community and economic development, and part of community and economic development does include housing. But economic development, as you guys said, really, smart growth is a mix of uses, and it's mixed growth. It's not 100% of anything, but when you file the application, the selectmen and other boards are gonna say, that's a housing application. We don't care about the existing building and the mixed-use building. Could you put that in the building, the new building you're building? And then you run into another silo that says, well, no, you can't put it in that building. But I will add this, I think if there's community support, that you can put in some piece of mixed use into an approval project, the state will hear that, okay? So right now, you're in these, square pegs for round holes, because you're following what is the standard guidance, but
Yeah.
you have to help push the state to see these things more integrated, because people want to see the mixed-use village. They do not want to see they don't want to see housing from Bass River to Barnstable, just housing,
Right.
housing. We do want to see,
Right, you're on a commercial corridor, the main
you
spine of the whole town here.
want to
so-
see those
And
villages.
our financing of our water treatment plan is, based primarily upon, the commercial tax rates. So I want to just, Mr. Chairman, just say, I actually agree with Peter's comment. So are you going to ask for an extension for submitting of these responses
So
to June 30th to give this, if
not even just June 30th. Today at the site visit, Mike Busby from Mass Housing has already told the town, you can at least have 15 more, so mid-July is where,
I want to, my interpretation was that he indicated he'd be supportive of it if the town wants to ask for an extension.
right.
Town hasn't asked for the
Right.
extension. It's on the agenda for the Board of Selectmen for the 27th. So, can I make a suggestion? If you'd like to correspond to the selectmen, my suggestion is that you maybe encourage the Board of Selectmen to advocate to Mass Housing that the project include a commercial mixed-use element based on the nature of the corridor, the need for housing, and for employment.
Right,
and it's also consistent with the zoning, correct, BCOD?
Correct.
that'll work?
Yeah.
Peter, that'll work? Good.
I like that. It's an endorsement of a
Yeah.
policy.
And I'll draft that up for Steve for your signature?
Yep.
Okay.
Just send it to everybody. Take a peek at. Good?
Well, thanks for having us in.
Sure. Thanks for waiting, sorry about the delay.
Like I said, I was down the hall.
Thank you.
It wasn't a long drive.
All right, good. All right, so back to our match on a meeting before the 27th. So last we were focused on, is it possible to set up a meeting prior to the 27th?
Karen, right?
So let me get your calendars out here.
Free?
I don't,
She doesn't know
What?
if Karen's free.
well, when do you want to?
So all we
have
can
a
do
meeting?
is, we can do maybe the week of the 19th sometime, or we can do the 26th prior to the 27th.
Well, do you want to go to the, and this is what I was trying to get to. We need to prepare an update on the Tourism Fund program for the Board of Selectmen. And it needs to be either for the 20th in which case it's a bit of a fire drill, because for the 20th, I need to kind of prepare something
Oh.
to be submitted for the packets this Thursday, which would be the 15th.
So,
Um,
so that's a no. I think the 20th is out. So
Okay.
my question back to you is, why are we being held up on the 20th or the 27th? What, there's no meetings for the?
Well, that was just the
BOS?
invite for the selectmen.
But there's no meetings after the 27th for July and August?
I can ask.
Okay.
I'm happy, they asked for
Okay.
the 27th.
Oh, yeah,
And
so
then
I,
it was, they added the meeting. They weren't going to meet. They don't generally meet on holiday. Monday is a holiday, Juneteenth holiday.
Yeah.
So they don't generally meet, but they recently added that, and they were just looking to lighten the load on the 27th.
Yep.
I'm happy to ask if you'd rather go sometime in July.
I think if we can get a little more time, right? Yeah. Maria and Joe, I'm looking at you guys. How are we coming along on the,
Yeah, we met and we'll,
Yep.
happy to go over whenever.
okay, does the 27th work for you, or do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, they're just looking for just an update, right? Or what our recommendations are to change the program, update the program.
I think they're looking for an update on what's going on in terms of, I tried to watch the selectmen's meeting. I think, what are you,
Okay, 27th.
what are you looking at for timing? When do we announce it? I think that if you have, changes that you're proposing, the committee should review those, and then you can use that as a platform to announce
Sixth.
kind of a new program.
Yeah, so then do we want to wait for the selectmen until July then, so that way we can discuss the changes first?
That's what I was trying to get at. Give ourselves a little more time to deliberate on what their findings are, so we can make a clear presentation. So,
I'll let them know that we're,
yeah, not,
Just we'd
The
like a
group
little
is- yeah.
additional time.
we would love to meet with the Board of Selectmen, Tom, but we just need a
Absolutely.
little more time.
But I would say our subcommittee recommendation, the number one thing is moving the time up.
Yeah,
It's to start the process and
right.
much earlier. That's,
All right, so, let me try again. So, the 19th, the week of the 19th to the 22nd, or do we want to meet on the 26th? And then we can do two things. We can talk about the special event update, and we can also talk about, or invite the people in that have submitted applications to us to ask them questions.
so you have three things. You have the chamber update, you have
Right.
the
Good point.
interviews and votes.
Yep.
And then an update on the special event program. And I'd love to kind of, just so I understand administratively, touch base to kind of understand what direction you guys are thinking we go in.
All right, so I guess you're asking is, can we accommodate three things in one meeting prior to, well, we don't have to worry about the 27th, though. So we're all good. So
So, and like,
we can have a meeting just to talk about those three things. And it doesn't have to be next week, it can be on the 27th. The only question I have is if we invite department heads in to talk about their applications, we got to give them and ourselves a little more time, so.
can we go for another meeting on
I'm-
the 27th?
Kind of leaning that way.
I think it makes sense,
We
and
can have meetings all over the place here, but I think to give ourselves the opportunity to thoroughly dive into these things, as well as to give the department heads a heads up about them and be able to answer questions to us, I think we need a meeting just for that.
agree.
You guys, okay? All right, so, that being said, what's a good day for that? When do you want to do that?
well, you could do it on the 27th.
Yeah, do you want to do it on the
I
27th?
just, yeah, I'm wondering, with the department heads, I don't know off the top of my head what's on the agenda for the 27th, so to the extent that we can arrange the meeting so it wraps up at 5:30,
Yeah,
in case anybody's on the selectmen agenda
that's
for
a good
6
idea.
o'clock, I
And-
just want
And
to,
given the fact that a lot of these applications are DPW related, maybe it makes sense to have the meeting at their location.
yeah. I can circle back with Jeff, and what you could do too is maybe do that item first.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and then we can tackle the other two items at a subsequent meeting?
So we got interviews. Mary, are you available? Which day? On the 27th. Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna do all three at the 27th, is that what you're saying?
If
You just said you thought you
We're
could do
focused.
3.
We can
I
do all
think we
three? You
can.
think it'd be okay? Okay, let's give it a go.
It'll go.
Yeah, all right. Good.
Yep.
All right. Excellent. Do we want to, you guys want to talk at all? Just go to item 5 instead of 4 right now, special event program update. Do you want to talk about anything, or want to hold off?
Well, we can give you an update.
Okay. Go ahead.
Sure. So we got together, we met with Mary too, get her input. I think that we bounced around a couple different ideas about trying to do it twice a year, but I think we settled on the recommendation, at least for now, until we can get a plan for going forward, is to move the whole process up. I believe we were saying like put out the beginning of September and look at making the awards by mid-October. So that way it gives the people, like the St. Patrick's Day Parade, extra time to get in. I mean, I think this last year, I think it's the latest I think we've ever done it. It seemed like it was like January or even February before we were doing it. So we got really behind a little bit.
Yep.
So I think if we move the process forward, the thinking was that most people that want to plan an event are planning further in advance than a few months, so that shouldn't be a problem. We've also looked around, Maria's found a bunch of other places that have different application processes, and there's a few of them that are really nice. Was it Plymouth and New Bedford had really nice applications that we were looking at that are much more streamlined, that even included right down to, have you contacted the different, here's a list of all the different permits that you might have to get as kind of part of the application process, so have you gone to the building department for your sign permit? Have you gone to the fire department? So it is part of the checklist. So we're in the process of now, Maria's done a lot of work on it already, is basically trying to reformat our application to make it a little simpler.
Okay.
There's some talk about just adding some different questions in, is this a new event? Is it, if you were not to have funding for, say, a year, is it sustainable? If you weren't going to get funding for 2 years, is your event sustainable? To try to see if we can get a better feeling as to, we've talked about that seed, giving people seed money, and then hopefully people can run with their events. Try to get a better idea on some of those events that we've funded for some time.
A lot of years, yep.
Right, and there is, there are some differences, I think, between the events we talked about, is like the more community events, like the parade and the things that are open, opposed to something that's, has a gate for say, or, there might be more room to fund something longer that way, opposed to something that you do want the seed money that is gonna be able to perpetuate its, self-fund itself.
Yep. Good, excellent.
Sum it up pretty much, sure.
Yeah, that's good. Excellent, thank you. All right, more to come on that. Thank you for doing that work, Maria and Jill, thanks. Okay, item number 4, FY '24 budget update.
It's in your packet.
Yep.
It's the usual format. I am going to take a crack at reformatting it. I don't think it's particularly user-friendly. But it's just been updated through last week. It reflects all of the different spending, and it reflects the adjustments that we made on the Parkers River Bridge, Packet Landing, putting that money back into the Public Improvement Fund, closing out a couple of the special events that didn't quite use up all their funds, putting that back into the event line. And then it shows the FY '24 appropriation and the FY '24 available.
All right. I know it's a lot to digest here, but maybe you can go through it a little bit and we can ask questions next meeting, or unless you have any questions now, Peter?
So what's
No.
available is the 1215 down the bottom,
That's correct.
but what's above it shows what's been allocated?
So if you're just looking at the FY '24 total available
Yep.
column, the funding that is up top includes the FY '23 balance plus the new appropriation for '24, so that carries over. 23 balance plus FY '24 equals FY '24 total available. The figures that are in the center of the page are the allocations that have already been made for various public improvement projects. There's short money there for the roadway banners. There's the beautification team carryover, drive-in site improvement funds that have been previously allocated. This is funding for design that's ongoing, and it's coupled with, I don't know, 4 or 5 other sources of funding. The 1605 town signage, that's old. So that total PI line there, this is why I want to clean it up, Peter. It's awkward. The total PI is the sum of the values from 432,693, plus those individual allocations that have been made for the tourism fund, for the public improvements, excuse me. And then we have the project line and the balance, and that just tallies up everything. All of the event money below, there's a balance of $921 that hasn't been allocated. Everything else has been, it's all under contract with the different events.
Karen? Quick question. The wayfinding signage design, where are we on that?
We are going to be looking for an extension to that grant and getting going on that project.
Okay. Maybe we can get an update.
Yep.
That's town-wide signage, correct?
It is. So it was the way I like to think of it is we do have kind of a hodgepodge of signage through town for different destinations and for, how to get from one place to another so that, the wayfinding. So, but,
Find your
how do
way.
you know which way is
your way.
north? I don't know. So it's putting together all of that. I think it's a $100,000 total budget for that project.
So of the 1215 there, what is committed? What is already gone?
What is all committed is the 82.5 in the encumbrances there for events, the economic studies and wayfinding sign. It doesn't have a subtotal on here. It would be the sum total of the 2935, the 20,000, the 12,000, and the 1,600 under allocated public improvement projects. Those are what have been encumbered. The top is really kind of budgeted figures that are available.
And is this 506 that we were talking about earlier today, anywhere in there yet? It's not, we haven't committed.
No,
Okay.
it's not in there. So, you have, I'm glad you raised that point. You have the $506,000 worth of requests, and you have $432,000 on July 1. So
In addition?
you have more requests than you have funds.
Oh, no, so it's not in addition,
Not
that
in
would be the
addition.
total.
Right,
So then we
right.
subtract what we just gave for the Sandy Pond.
Right, we'll update that.
Right.
I like I said, this can use a little gussying up.
Do you have any idea where the position, the economic development position is in terms of?
Well, yeah, it's, we haven't made progress over the last month.
Yeah.
So it's in the
Okay.
same place.
Yep.
But it's absolutely a priority on the
By
list.
the way, on the website, Kyle's name is still on the website.
Oh,
And
is it? Where at? It shouldn't be.
it says economic development, here are the economic development programs, and then if you send it an email, it comes back under undeliverable. I'll send you the page.
Would you? That'd be great. Thank you.
Probably just missed a page.
There's a few pages on the website like that.
So Karen, I'm sorry, under the economic development projects, the 155, 342, that's just sort of earmarked for whatever, it hasn't been allocated yet or committed to any projects? Economic
Where's
development.
the, where are you looking, Peter?
So economic development projects, all the way on, at fiscal year '24, total available, 155?
That's right. So those have not been allocated.
Right. Is that a percentage of the overall budget?
Well, it would be if we wanted it to be, but it wasn't intentional. So in '23, I think, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, because Kyle was here kind of doing the backup. The committee funded a number of projects that were considered economic studies that are, generally supportive of the tourism fund mission. And then when the budget was set up in '23, prior to town meeting, we, kind of backed into it saying we knew we would need additional funds for economic studies. You can correct me if my memory's wrong. So the 141 was probably the 20%. The 40 was what we needed for the wages. Marketing and promotion was a hard figure. We kept to the $100,000 on special events. So the balance, Peter, went into that economic studies line. So if you want to move money around that's been appropriated 2023 or later, you need to go to town meeting to do so.
Okay.
Good, Peter? Good? Good questions. Next up, we have item number 7, Mass Development Grants Update.
So that's Bill wasn't able to join us tonight. I can tell you we submitted for 3 grants. One was $10 million for MassWorks, and that's going to cover, I didn't print out the map, but contracts 2 and 3 for the wastewater plan. A $1.5 million streetscape request that will cover the balance of Route 28 that's not being covered through the TIP. And then we submitted a $100,000 request to look at how to encourage mixed-use development.
To whom?
That was a special community planning grant.
What agency?
It was the DHCD or whatever DHCD is.
So none of these are
the
mass
name.
development grants. You've just,
The type-
that list is
You're right.
Office of Housing
Yep.
and Economic
It's-
Development. Or now they changed it.
No, great point. It's got 5
Office of-
letters now.
Yeah,
Whatever it
it's
is.
Economic
But
Development.
it isn't. Nope, that's an error on the
So
agenda.
Okay, because we have open meeting law, and we just, so, there's no update on the mass development grant, or,
I think the intention
Just
was,
skip
I
ahead.
think that the intention was, I was away on vacation, and I don't know, Steve, you asked Don Marie to add something, and something got
Yeah, this
caught in translation. So
Oh, this is
that's
good.
an honest
isn't what I
mistake.
asked Don Marie, but this is, what you just said is good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It points out to what we wanted to talk about was, this committee ought to be supporting and looking at going after other economic development grants. This is an opportunity. There's, by way of backing up a little bit, about a month or so ago, we invited Jay Patikas from the state. I get the office where he's from.
Mass
wrong.
Development.
Mass Development. But he basically said, in a nutshell, guys, we have some money here, but you need to apply for it. So a few of us went off and, came up with some ideas that we wanted to apply for, but we ran up against what the town was doing as far as economic development, and that's the $10 million and the $1.5 million. I didn't know about the $100,000 one, but we pulled back, this committee pulled back, specifically because we didn't want to compete with the other grants in the town. Having said that, we still think there's opportunities, in addition to what the town administration has applied for, that we could be going after to augment what we're doing here, to bring additional economic development, housing or infrastructure to the community. So we want to, there's a few of us here, we'll involve everyone that wants to be involved more, that want to pull together some projects, give ourselves a little time, tie the projects back into whatever plans the town has worked on, i.e. a master plan, a visioning plan, parks and recreation plan, open space plan, tie them back, and what are the 4 or 5 projects that pop off of those plans that we could possibly tackle, go after, and use some of this money that we have here as a match to lever some of that state money. So that's kind of what we're all thinking about here. And jump in, Maria, because I'm
well,
kind of staying on
two
this.
things. again, there's no competition.
Right.
There's
kinda-
competition within an agency, perhaps, but there's no competition from two different types of agencies. And in particular, we should look at the mass development grants as standalone from anything else the town wants to submit, and we would just make a recommendation to see if it's, anyway. With that being said, I will send you, I've got your emails now, or we'll get your emails now, and I had forwarded to the group the list of available funding through mass development and also the awards that were made. So sometimes, right, if you look at what they've already given out, you'll get a nice sense of what types of projects and towns that we would like to promote. And one of them, which at our last meeting, Mr. Chairman, was something that you and Joe Manning looked at, and just to advise anybody, there was no quorum, you just decided that you would look at it individually,
Right.
which was very helpful. I think the intention was to look at the money that would allow for enhancements and improvement at existing public spaces. And that would, again, be another bucket of money that, right, we're talking about enhancing certain projects. So in that context, you're absolutely right. Perhaps my recommendation is we look at the available money, look at what types of projects the state has typically funded, then we can do the larger overlay and saying of all the things that are coming into us or we are aware of, or somebody might come up, well, what about that idea? Then we can be prepared on or before the application date, which is sometime in early June, May or June. The state asks for the towns to submit, a pre-application, and they'll give us feedback on whether or not that application has any legs. And then if it does, then we'll go to the administration here within town and find out, if staff has can support an application, so. But that's generally how the process works, but, I think you're absolutely right. If we start thinking about it now, we'll be prepared.
So we have a little group together. It's Maria, myself, and Joe Manning. Anyone else, welcome to join us, but the goal is really to, as I said, look at some of these plans in town, pick off 4 or 5 projects that we think make sense, go back and see how we can marry them up with the state resources, and then present something to the full committee here, and then eventually to the town administration.
But we're really not a group. We're just identifying things.
Right.
We're not deliberating, we're not making decisions.
Right.
We're-
Right.
Just to be very clear,
Right.
I want to,
So,
Meet
if
anybody
anyone's
this
interested,
week.
let us know, let Maria know, and we'll let you know when we're gonna convene again, just to talk about these, right?
yeah.
Without,
You know what I'll do? At the next meeting, I'll just bring a hard copy of the list. How's that? Make life easier for you.
Sounds good.
How's that?
If you want to forward it to me, Maria,
Yeah, you can put it in the.
I will send it, yeah, and I can send it to everybody. I don't know that I have to look. It's not ringing a bell.
Oh, maybe my email went in your junk file. Who knows? Possibly.
okay. Good. We got
Minutes?
minutes. We don't have any minutes. And upcoming meeting agenda items, we've tackled that, right?
We did, and we've got the right dates on the agenda. We anticipated correctly.
This is-
Summer schedule.
What's,
That was,
yeah, we don't,
that's a carryover.
we can talk
Your
about that.
request.
Yeah, we can talk about that the next meeting. Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. We have a
So
second.
moved.
We have a second. We have to have a roll call.
Danielle Newcomb, aye.
Peter Slovak, aye.
Steve O'Neill, aye.
Maria Marasco, aye.
Joe Gibbs, aye.
Made that
Thank you very
second.
much.